I'm Richie Suave Flores.
And I'm Cori Crenshaw.
And this is Sporty with Cori and Richie Suave.
Floater, center field. The Diamondbacks are world champions.
Down is the motion man. Little flip to Fitzgerald. He scores. And the Cardinals win an amazing game.
Mikhail Bucker with a chance. He walks in. He scores. Mikhail Bucker for the second straight game is the hero.
Welcome back in Sporty Nation. This is episode 12. We've got a lot of interesting things going on. Per the usual, we are going to be talking about the Diamondbacks because as we are speaking, they should be clenching the playoffs. So, jumping in our metaphorical pool. And then we'll also be talking about the Hamilton hazing scandal that's been going on because we thought, it's about time we talk about that. And, of course, we are so happy to have Sarah back in because we've been waiting for her to come back in town so we can, of course, be talking some amazing community things with her. But first, I have an update for you guys. So last week, I had talked about the USC goalie and how they had to take one of their normal skaters and put him in pads and everything. There was apparently a whole lot more to the story, and ASU's D2 ACHA coach kind of filled me in on it over this past week. And apparently, to answer your question, Richie, they have 3 goaltenders. All of them could not go to, could not travel for school reasons or whatever, but they couldn't travel. So they asked the D2 commissioner if they could have an alumni play on as a goaltender for that game or the 2 games. And the commissioner told them it was illegal. I mean, that's pretty obvious. And then so then they found another one that was randomly on campus that was a student, completely legal. He was the one who traveled with them. Right. So he's not even one of their normal 3 goaltenders. Well, he is also goofy-handed. So when he got hurt, everything was backwards. So no one that could fill his position they actually didn't even have the equipment for them to use. And if you're a goaltender out there, you know that giving someone your glove is a big deal. So the fact that they had to give their glove, they had to do like rock, paper, scissors, right, and try and figure out who was going to give up their glove in order to give the opposite team a chance to play goaltender. So it was just very interesting. They had to give a glove and a stick, and I don't know. It's just a weird story, and I'm not sure I'm going to see anything really particularly like it ever again. So just thought I'd fill you guys in.
No, I didn't think that story could get any weirder, and it did. That's amazing to me. So thank you for that information, Cori. I didn't even know that. You sprung that on me on the show.
That's why I had a conference out there to make sure I had all my facts right. But I wanted, after all your questions that you had last week, I wanted you to make sure.
Everything has been answered now, and it was so much more complicated than I thought it would be. Another thing that's so complicated is the playoff race. Down the stretch of Major League Baseball, as we try to figure out who slots in where in the National League and the American League in terms of the wild cards. As we're taping right now, the Diamondbacks pretty much have clinched a spot in the playoffs. It's just a matter of whether or not they're in that first wild card spot or the second wild card spot. By the time you see this, you'll know because it's again, taping on Sunday, 6-game lead over the Colorado Rockies for that first spot in the wild card. So as we wind down the season here, and it's going to come down pretty close in terms of who that other team is in the wild card between the Rockies, the Brewers, and the Cardinals. And we thought it'd be interesting to kind of go through and let you guys know who we want the Diamondbacks to play in that wild card game, who we think they have the best shot at beating so they can advance to play the Dodgers in the division series.
Yes. Obviously, we want them to play at home because their home record has been so much better. So it'll be, and plus, we kind of want to go to the game too. We've kind of already started planning a sporty outing. But at home, 49-28, definitely better. So then their road 40-38. So I definitely want them to hold that number 1 spot. And on top of it, I thought I was going to be coming into the show today saying, 100% I want them to be playing the Brewers over the Rockies. But as I was doing my research and I was thinking about it, I changed my own mind. I'm not sure at this point because the Colorado Rockies haven't been doing very well lately in a high-pressure situation. It was their second place wildcard spot to lose, and they are slowly doing it. And that's the thing that makes me wonder if, in the end of all of it, the D-backs in this season are 11-8 against Colorado and 4-3 against Milwaukee. So they're ahead on both teams. It just, I feel like the Rockies are imploding upon themselves, and as much as the Diamondbacks have been able to capitalize on the Dodgers, who were imploding upon themselves, it might be better in the end for them to play the Rockies because they've seen them more this season.
What is this saying? It's better the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. Is that the saying, or did I just completely butcher that?
Some are close to that,
But I think that's kind of the case in a way, as far as your argument goes, is because they've beaten the Rockies 11 times this year. They actually match up well against the Rockies, and the Rockies are not a good road team. They're basically a 500 team on the road, much like the Diamondbacks are a 500 team on the road. So in that respect, that's a good thing. But here's my thing in terms of playing the Rockies that concerns me. That lineup of the Colorado Rockies is ridiculous. And when you're facing guys like Nolan Arenado, who is neck and neck with Paul Goldschmidt in the MVP race in the National League, when you're facing guys like Mark Reynolds, who is having a career season this year, that Rockies lineup is tough to face. And if you make a mistake against them, they're going to capitalize. And even though Zach Greinke is going to get the start in that wild card game, more than likely, if he does make that mistake and gives up a couple home runs, game's over. So that's what scares me about the Rockies. Their pitching doesn't scare me too much. The Diamondbacks have been able to beat up on them quite a bit in that respect. And in fact, you have the run differential, which is pretty in favor of the Diamondbacks, right?
Yeah, it is. But the other thing that actually scares me about Colorado is Nolan Arenado. You mentioned it. It might not be their pitching, but on defense, if they hit down that third base line, it's always going to be an out. And that was a big problem in this last homestand against them. And that was something that I'm honestly that if something really does strike some fear into me, it is Nolan Arenado and the fact that he is one stellar defenseman, and that it caused a lot of problems because some reason whenever they play them, they hit down that third base line like a good 90% of the time.
Yeah, so I mean, there's the Colorado Rockies. I mean, they're one of those teams that's interesting, and we'll see how that plays out. But the team I want to most play in this wild card game is the Milwaukee Brewers. And I'm going to ask you a question, Cori, which is, can you name their best starting pitcher off the top of your head?
I don't think anyone can.
Yeah, you can't. I didn't know it until I looked it up about a week ago, and it's Zach Davies. Zach Davies is their best starting pitcher, and that's why I want to face the Brewers. It's because the Diamondbacks are just so much more talented than the Milwaukee Brewers are. The Diamondbacks lineup, as we've seen just in this series alone against the Miami Marlins, 11 runs on Friday, 6 runs on Saturday. This offense is ridiculous. Paul Goldschmidt and JD Martinez have carried this team in the month of September. They're a nasty lineup that you do not want to face. So I'll take Zach Davies against JD Martinez and Paul Goldschmidt any day of the week, especially with Zach Greinke on the mound for the Diamondbacks going up against that Milwaukee lineup, who the only player that kind of scares me on that team is Eric Thames, and he got off to a hot start in the month of April and then kind of tailed off after that.
Yeah, well, to bring up the run differential that you're talking about before, so I can bring them up literally next to each other. The Colorado Rockies, the Diamondbacks runs 4 is 101 and against is 69. Brewers 4 is 34 and against is 28. I mean, no matter which team they play, it's going to depend on the Diamondbacks offense, because if their offense is on and they can really have people like JD and Goldie and Jake Lamb and AJ really performing the way that they do, I don't think they're going to have a problem against either of these teams. But you are totally correct in the fact that there is not any pitching that stands out amongst the Brewers. You are at the point where how are you really going to, have something that's going to scare the other team when it comes to starting pitching? Because, Greinke's had some bad couple outings. We will not dispute that because I think everyone has agreed with that. But Greinke is known as a very good starting pitcher, and that's something that you can scare someone going into that wild card game. And I just don't think they have anyone that strikes any fear into anyone. And I'm sorry if that's insulting, but it's true. So what can you really do? I mean, I think either way, the Diamondbacks will do good against either of these teams. I think the Brewers have a certain amount of drive right now because they realize how close they are to that spot, and they have had a lot more drive lately and been doing better than they had projected to be. I didn't think anyone thought that the second position in this would be such a close race as it has been lately, but I do not think that they're going to be able to overcome the Rockies and really be able to beat them. And I think it's going to end up being the Rockies that's going to be playing the Diamondbacks. But I think a much easier and softer win will be the Brewers overall.
Yeah, and then the Cardinals are in it as well. I don't want to play against Carlos Martinez and the St. Louis Cardinals. But like you said, they're struggling lately. So the Brewers are hot, Cardinals not, Rockies not. We'll see how it plays out the rest of this week heading into the postseason. But first, let's take a jaunt into Cori's Corner.
On today's jaunt in my Cori's Corner, I would love to talk to you guys about the predicted clinching of the preseason, the postseason for the Diamondbacks. This is a very special moment because we haven't been able to have this in a good few years, since 2011. So, I mean, I'm really excited by the fact that they're finally probably going to be going to the postseason, and I'm so excited that so many fans were backing the team this year, and I just wanted to share my excitement and welcome all of our Sporty Nation to share their excitement online as well. It is a community. We've always wanted to make this show something that is not only for us, but it is for our fans as well, for us to all share and be excited about things. And I just really want everyone to be talking about this and really getting amped up for this wild card game because it's definitely going to be a fun one, and we're definitely going to try and get some tickets and head out there. So if you see us at that game, be sure to stop by us and say hello. But it just very excited about this postseason, and I hope you guys are too.
Cori, I 100% agree with you. I cannot wait to see how the city embraces a winning team for once as the Diamondbacks head into that National League wildcard game against, like we said, opponent to be determined. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Chase Field's going to be rocking, 50,000 people, probably going to be a sold-out crowd. Going to be a lot of fun coming up. But let's move on to kind of one of the biggest storylines in the state of Arizona, and it has to do with high school football and, unfortunately, the law. And that is what is going on at Hamilton High School and the hazing case that's been going on. And we've learned more and more over the past 6 months that this has been happening. The latest of which is that a sixth victim has come out and explained their story to police. And on top of that, Hamilton has reassigned the principal, athletic director, and former head coach Steve Bellis. This thing just continues to get more and more layers to it and more complicated. Cori, what's kind of the latest that people should know about as far as this goes?
Well, from what I have gathered, it was for a very long time. The coach has been saying that he had no idea that any of this stuff was going on, and that he acted like it was this whole big shock to him, but he knew about it the entire time. And the fact that he knew about it and said, like, stop doing it, but he never actually did anything to stop it is pretty astonishing, honestly. And the fact that they're being reassigned is basically a step for the law to possibly, have stuff come down on them as well. So it's really sad. And it's really scary too, because these are kids. Like, these are all minors. So the fact that these kids are doing these things to other kids is really sad and really disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, when we say hazing, basically what we're talking about more or less is sexual assault. That's what these kids are being charged with in these cases, including allegedly there were fingers put in places where they shouldn't be in terms of a human body. You can put 2 and 2 together there. It's really sad, and it's really awful what Hamilton is deciding to do in this case. I mean, there was the biggest thing that I saw this week that came out that was really disgusting was, and you talked about Steve Bellis reportedly saying that he had no idea what was going on. Well, there were some emails released this week that tell a completely different story. And it says that, quote, the parents of the 2 boys told police that at one of the team meetings in early of the 2016 season, Bellis gave his warning and then recalled the kids as, quote, a bunch of Sandusky's, which is, of course, referring to Jerry Sandusky's assault of players at Penn State for many, many years. He is now in prison, of course. But again, this is just if you're Hamilton, how do you let this happen? If you're parents, how do you let this happen to your kids? You know, we had on the Freaks recently, we had Matt Rodewald from Fox 10 here in Phoenix, and he was explaining that amazingly, a lot of parents from Hamilton aren't showing up at some of like the local meetings, the school board meetings that are going on there, and speaking out about this and going, hey, wait a minute, why are these guys still employed in this school district? And let this happen. There's not allowed, for some reason, it's this weird cult almost going on in Hamilton to where they're scared or something. It's sad that more isn't coming out from this. More people are basically getting thrown in jail or being fired.
Well, that's what, as it is right now, even their reassignments at this point, like a statement had come out that had said that while none of the employees have been charged, it could be some time before the Maricopa County Attorney's Office decides how it will proceed. Therefore, to avoid any distraction caused by this uncertainty, the district administration and employees believe that the reassignment is the best course at this time. So obviously they're still investigating it, but the fact that it took them this long to remove them from that situation completely is astonishing, because at this point, the fact that you mentioned that parents aren't showing up and, you know, voicing the fact that they were still around. The thing that bothers me is Hamilton for a very long time has been a very well-known and very good football program in this state. And I am sorry to say this, but I feel like so many people are not giving this the disdain that it deserves because of the fact that they put football over those children's lives. And this is something that's going to scar them for the rest of their lives. You have scarred children. You've scarred them for the rest of their lives, and you think that football is more important than that, and that is astonishing to me, because it is, one, high school football. Yes, obviously you want your child to go on and play college and get a scholarship and do all of those things. But at the end of the day, it is football, people. There are so many more things. And I mean, we do a show about sports. We love sports and we appreciate sports just as much, if not more, than a lot of people. And I can tell you one thing, if it comes down to it, I would much rather have these kids have good, nice, happy lives and not be traumatized by things like this, because certain officials and certain coaches and people,
all they care about is winning.
Put winning above, and not to mention, is that the way you want your child to be raised too? Where winning goes above everything else, and your ego and putting down others, and especially putting down others on your team. And some of these kids were so injured that they weren't even able to play. Why would you want kids that are, especially if they're key players on your team, why would you want them to be injured so they can't play? That it defeats the purpose. The only reason why you would do it is to, honestly, if you think it is quote unquote funny and you are trying to push your ego and say how much you are better than someone else and trying to make yourself feel better. There are other ways to get over your lack of self-esteem, and this is not anywhere close to being appropriate.
I 100% agree. And here's, just so everybody knows at home, Sean Rostad, Steve Bellis, Ken James, again, the principal, the athletic director, and the coach, they are facing charges, or they are the possible charges that have been suggested from the attorneys. Rostad faces 2 counts, 1 failure to report, 1 of hindering prosecution. Steve Bellis faces 3 counts, a failure to report, and 2 counts of child abuse. And then Ken James faces a failure to report and 2 counts of child abuse and a hindering prosecution. So he faces 4 counts. So we have to imagine that there are more things are going to drop on this later in the year. But what I kind of want to get to is kind of what happens next. And I've been saying this for a couple of months now, which is it's clear to me that Hamilton needs a complete restart of their program. And they need to completely, basically rinse it out, bust out the Clorox. And what needs to happen here for me is something that is called the death penalty. And I don't know if, a lot of you might not familiar with this, but Southern Methodist University NCAA program back in the 80s was busted for a lot of NCAA violations. And there was so many that the program was basically stopped for like 2 seasons completely. And I think that's what needs to happen here. I legitimately think, I don't know who has the power to do this, but they need to come down in Hamilton and say, listen, your football program is done for 2 years at the very least. And basically you're bringing in new coaches. And a lot of people are going to say, well, what about the poor kids who had nothing to do with this? Bullcrap. I don't care. They can transfer to another school if they want to.
A lot of them are. They're transferring to Chandler, which is their rival. So the rival school, Chandler, is actually, getting good players off of this, and so it helps them. But I mean, I just hope that people are learning from this and not going to replay these mistakes, because everyone has hazing in some way, shape, or form. But I mean, this hazing is not a good thing to do in general. But I mean, this was way over the line, and the fact that I just don't want, now that those kids are going to different schools and stuff like that, for any of this to spread to anywhere else. And I want people to learn the lesson from this, and the fact that it is more about the kids and their development as opposed to winning every game. So that's one of the things that I want them to focus on. And I think you are correct in the fact of trying to disband this completely and show that this will not be tolerated on any level. And the fact that they're charging some of them as adults also I appreciate, because of the fact that they really need to show an example out of Hamilton. Hazing is not okay, and this is why it's not okay, and we are going to stop it, and we're going to do something against it. And unless you do something to really show that you are going to stop this type of hazing and hazing in general, nothing will be done to stop it.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's have some fun. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome back to the program Sarah Beth Brooks for her Community Corner.
And for our collective favorite segment of today's show, we bring on Sarah Beth again to talk about our community things that are going on in sports around Arizona and around the nation. We're so happy to have you back.
Thanks. Yeah, it's good to be back. I know I've been out for a little while, been out of town, but I've been keeping up with some things that are going on around the valley, so that's pretty good.
She was just building anticipation for her return. We teased it a couple weeks ago, and then everybody's like, "Damn it, what happened to Sarah? Now she's back!"
Bam, just like that. Happy to be here.
I was about to do a joke from Rick and Morty, but I'm just not even going to do it. So,
so what do you got for us this week, Sarah?
Well, first things first, should we mention that the Diamondbacks just clinched?
Yes. We kind of talked about the top of the show, but in the middle of
But we just watched it happen live.
In the middle of our taping, it was pretty cool. The players, they were all hugging each other in the dugout. They all kind of left the dugout for a moment to tip their caps to the fans, and it was a really cool moment.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the fans standing up, clapping along with the players, so go D-backs.
And it's just really cool to see them in the postseason again.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this for so long.
6 years. 6 long, disastrous seasons.
All the fans should be tuning into
really feel Richie.
Yeah.
Tune into the post-game show. I bet they'll have some fun things on there today.
Champagne. Delicious.
Wait, you like champagne, Richie?
No, I don't.
I was going to say, you are very particular about your alcohol, so I didn't.
Do not like champagne.
You could take a beer bath, though, right? You would do that.
Absolutely.
It depends on the beer, though.
As long as it's Coors Light.
Oh, there you go. Have you been to Golden before? Taking that tour?
He hates Coors Light.
Why?
and Bud and all those.
I'm a beer snob.
He's a beer snob.
Well, I probably wasn't going to mention this until later on, but Oktoberfest is coming up. So when we get together a little bit closer to all of that, we'll talk about some really cool events that'll be going on for the beer community.
Yes.
Which we are in large part of.
Yes, especially me.
All right, so the Coyotes. The Coyotes are offering a reading program to Arizona teachers, and this is the third straight season that they're doing it. It is so wonderful. Can you imagine Howler visiting a classroom of just screaming little elementary kids? And it's all because of this reading program that they're implementing. It's going to be so great. It encourages students grades 2 through 4, so second grade through fourth grade, to increase the reading time that they're doing in the classroom as well as at home. Teachers are going to be given benchmark type stuff and Coyotes themed materials so that way they can track the progress of these students. And then the top readers will get things like game tickets. And then the class that collectively reads the most will get things like a visitor or a visit from Howler or a visit from players to the classroom. So I think this is super cool because as a kid, I remember having reading programs and it was never anything sports related.
It wasn't as cool as this.
Yeah, it was literally like you had to go home and track, like I read 10 hours over the weekend and then you got nothing for it. Now kids get to have Howler come to the classroom.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Do you remember doing the reading programs as a kid? What kind of prize did you get?
Well, oh God, it's gonna sound like bragging. I was like one of those kids that was always, they did accelerated reader when I was a kid. So
yeah,
I was always one of the ones that was like too high on the, so I had to read all the, everyone got to read the like picture books in elementary school and I had to read chapter books. So I always was so mad
Cori's
about
in first grade reading Island of the Blue Dolphins already.
So I was always angry. I was like, everyone else gets to read these chapter books. I read these picture books and I'm over here reading all these chapter books because I'm too high of a level. I was like, so I get punished because I'm intelligent.
Yeah, so while everybody else was reading Green Eggs and Ham, Cori was too busy reading about holes and Stanley Yelnats.
Go back, 25 plus years, Richie and I are in the corner like, oh, look at these pop-ups. And Cori's reading Webster, memorizing
definitions. If Howler would have come to my classroom, I probably would have read so many more chapter books.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I am really excited to let you guys know about this program because I think that if you have a kiddo or have a friend that's a teacher or anything, you can still potentially apply for this program, I believe. I don't think that it's like closed off for the rest of the season. It's the third time that they're bringing it back, and I think you can still enter it. And they'll supply materials for you that are Coyotes themed that will hopefully get kids interested in reading more.
Cool idea. Good on you, Coyotes. I love this idea.
Yeah, so go to their website if you want to learn more.
With a mother that is a fourth grade teacher, I say this is always a good idea because getting kids to read and to actually be interested in their education is hard anymore, and to get parents interested in their children's education is also hard anymore.
Yeah.
So any of these things I think are great, and I'm just so glad that we are focusing on our youth because that's our future, and I really like that they're doing this.
And I swear I am not just saying this because of this segment, but as a kid, I didn't particularly like reading. It wasn't something that I like shied away from, but it wasn't my favorite thing to do. And I think the reason why is because they would always throw, like you said, those colorful books at you that were just really, really animated, or it was just like a very obviously made up elementary type story.
Right.
And it wasn't until I read an autobiography about a hockey player that I found out I love reading, but I just don't have much of an imagination. So I want to read real factual things. And I hate to kind of reference that because I don't remember to this day who it was, but I remember thinking, like, this guy's cool. I could read more.
I was just about to ask you if you remember who it was.
It wasn't even an Arizona figure.
Yeah, it was probably something like Bobby Orr or something.
Sure.
Go with that. Go with that.
But so I think it's cool. I mean, I think that, like, exposing children to different types of reading is good as well. And it seems like this program probably does a really good 360 rounded concept to get kids to read more. Also, with the Coyotes, they did have their town hall yesterday. If you weren't able to attend, you can go to their website. The entire thing is posted on their website. Their new CEO, Patterson, He did mention that there was no new updates on the arena, which is not shocking to any of us, but he's letting us know that it is high on their priority list. I think the funnier thing was that Chaika mentioned they're strategically not naming a captain yet. We probably all know it's going to be Richie Suave.
He's the captain of the show.
No,
so,
no,
I mean,
wait. I have a better joke. Are you ready for this one?
Oh, God.
I am the captain of the Tobias Reeder fan club.
There is so much truth in that. It is so sad.
So if that was what he was referring to, then absolutely.
I mean, I'm surprised you haven't actually made a website yet. You know, they have how they have like the Taylor Swift fan club and you can buy tickets to her concert early and stuff like that. Like, you should create one that's a Tobias Reeder fan club and like get a domain and everything. I really think you should go official on this.
Here's the thing though, I'm a member of the media as well. So if I was just a normal fan, I would totally do it. But since I'm a member of the media, I can't go around like fanboying at Tobias Reeder all the time, even though I still do it.
I think that's a solid point. Solid point.
I'm going to tell Coyotes PR to not let you anywhere near him anymore because this might be like a concern for his well-being.
That's probably a good thing, actually. Yeah.
All right, moving on then. Suns fans, who is going to be the next Suns legend on a bobblehead, for the upcoming season? Apparently, you get to decide. So the Suns are doing something really cool this year where fans can vote on the 90s Suns bobblehead night theme. So you get a chance to see the player that you want to have a bobblehead of.
Right.
You go to their website. It's suns.com/bobble. I think there's 5 people you can vote on. And the voting does close this Thursday at noon. So this is something you got to jump on. If you want to vote for the 90s Suns legend that you most want to receive on a bobblehead for the 2017-2018 season, get online, vote for the player that you want, and then if they get the most votes, that's the bobblehead you get to take home.
Yeah, so do you have the candidates?
I do. Charles Barkley, Kevin Johnson, Dan Marley, Jason Kidd, or Cedric Ceballos.
Okay, this one's an easy one for me.
It's an easy one for you.
I know Cori's not that big of an NBA fan, so she probably...
Well, I have someone that I would not vote for. Does that count?
Tell us.
Yeah.
I would most definitely, absolutely, positively not choose Charles Barkley.
Oh, now that is a take. Explain.
He's very obnoxious. He's a very obnoxious man, and I have never been a big fan of listening to him talk. I mean, ever. I just don't like hearing the man talk. He's obnoxious. He's not very nice very often, and I just don't like hearing him talk. And I don't think he is a very good advocate for Arizona sports, and I don't like anyone that gives Arizona sports a bad name.
That's a good point. Okay, I can understand that a little bit. My pick would be Jason Kidd, because when I was a kid, I grew up a big Suns fan because of my dad. Before the Diamondbacks were here, before the Coyotes really became a big thing. And Jason Kidd, I had a poster of Jason Kidd in my room when I was younger. So it'd absolutely be Jason Kidd for me.
I don't know that I should say this, but I feel like my memories of watching the Suns are more from the 90s watching Jason Kidd than I have in like the last few seasons. I mean, Jason Kidd was really, really fun to watch in the 90s, but I would probably still vote for Thunder Dan.
Ah, okay. GCU coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't go there, but he's big in the Valley. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I know in the beginning of this, we touched base on the fact that October will be having a lot of events coming up. So we'll make sure to tell you guys about what's going on in October. There'll be Beer Fest. There'll be Breast Cancer Awareness Month races. So we'll make sure to shout out all of the things that you can get to. But with that being said, I did want people to know to make sure you're tuning in. We'll have some updates coming from Fiesta Bowl soon. So that'll be something to keep an eye out on. They're doing a lot of fundraising in the Valley and doing a lot of community events. So Fiesta Bowl, I'm in contact with them, and we'll be chit-chatting more and letting you guys know what's going on.
Very nice. Thank you for coming on, Sarah. We miss you. Thanks for coming back.
I'll try to come back as soon as I can.
Thanks again to Sarah for coming on and hanging out with us again this week. We did miss her the last couple of weeks. She will be back with us again next week for the latest in community events around the Valley. But let's finish up this episode with my Dick of the Week. And this week, it is going to the Pittsburgh Penguins of the NHL because of a statement they released on Sunday afternoon that I thought was a little bit tone deaf. So the Pittsburgh Penguins, obviously your Stanley Cup champions of the past season, are going to go visit the White House and President Trump. that in itself, I don't have a problem with. Teams have been doing that for years and years and years, and it's not that big of a deal. But the fact that the Penguins put out a statement saying, quote, any agreement or disagreement with the president's politics, policies, or agenda can be expressed in other ways. However, we very much respect the rights of other individuals and groups to express themselves as they see fit. To release this on a weekend where we're seeing so much protests in terms of kneeling during the national anthem and President Trump weighing in on Colin Kaepernick and anthem protests, I feel like the Pittsburgh Penguins were tone deaf in this. I didn't think this statement was necessary from them, and it makes them look bad. If they were to just show up at the White House without this statement, that would have been fine. Most of the team's not even American to begin with anyway. But to put this statement out was just tone deaf on part of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that's why they are my Dick of the Week. And that's going to do it for this episode of Sporty with Cori and Richie Suave. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this time. We'll talk to you again next week, and congratulations to the Arizona Diamondbacks heading to the postseason. Good night and good sports, everybody.